Good morning. I just had was given a review and a rundown of the activities during the past 24 hours and some of the next steps by our emergency management team. And let me first thank our emergency management team for a job well done during the past 24 hours. I'd like to also thank the members of the Department of Transportation, our Guard, the many local and county officials who've been working straight over the night on these very tough conditions. I'd also like to thank all the utilities that have been very cooperative with our emergency team here in North Carolina. And I'd like to also thank the hospitals and the shelters that have been very active over the night because of this very cold weather that's impacted most of North Carolina. This has been a tough storm for North Carolina. It's been a little different than what we anticipated when we held a conference yesterday, especially in the east. We had a lot more black ice than anticipated when, frankly, we could have used a little bit more snow regarding the road conditions. But we've adapted, and I'd like to say our team's done a good job. Now, the bad news is this, is that yesterday we had a 0 fatality goal. But sadly, we've already had 2 fatalities that were weather-related in accidents in Surry County in 2 different accidents. Our hearts and prayers are with those families that were impacted by this accident. But what we want to do is make sure we have no more accidents, especially that are weather-related. We want to make sure people continue to be safe and use sound judgment as to whether or not they have to get out on these roads during these continued difficult conditions throughout North Carolina. I think the main thing I want to say right now is that I just want to encourage everyone to continue to be safe. We do not want any more fatalities. Not just safe in driving the car, but also being safe just walking out in their yard or walking up the street. There are often during these ice storms with this black ice, there are pedestrian accidents. I just took my usual walk this morning into work, and I about busted my rear end. And it doesn't take much to slip under these conditions, and it almost happened to the governor. It can happen to anyone. And so don't take anything for granted just because your sidewalks or your roads might be clear during the next 24 hours, which we're attempting to do across the state. Accidents can still occur because the cold weather still is going to be with us for a brief time. With that, I'd like to give you a more specific update by the people who are doing the hard work. I'd like to especially thank our Emergency Management Director, Mike Sprayberry, who's going to give you a brief rundown on some of what we've done and what we need to do during the next 10 hours or so. I'm going to have Secretary Tony Tata give you the latest update on the road conditions and some of the activity that DOT has been taking. And again, they've been just fantastic working during the last overnight. And also the commander of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, Bill Gray, will give some comments about some of the accidents that we've had and some of the steps that will encourage people to take to protect themselves in the future. And I want to especially encourage, if you got to get out on the roads, please wear your seatbelt if you have to get out on the roads. One of the fatalities that we just learned about did not have a seatbelt on. It was 2 passengers in 2 different accidents that lost their lives, and I'm heartbroken about this loss of life, and we've got to do everything we can to prevent future loss of life due to this storm. So with that, let me have Mike come up and give you an update.
Thank you, Governor, and as he just said, our thoughts and prayers are with those families up in Surry County. It's always tough losing a loved one. The weather's been bad, but if you look at our surrounding states, we think we might have dodged a little bit of a bullet. We've been a little bit more fortunate than the original weather forecast indicated as far as amounts of snow, but as the governor did say, it's still treacherous driving conditions out there, and we want folks to be safe in North Carolina. Let me give you a little quick synopsis of what we've done here in North Carolina as far as the State Emergency Response Team. 18 counties have activated their Emergency Operations Center, and most of the other counties in the eastern and central part of the state are monitoring the situation so that if they need resources, they can ask for them. I'd like to specifically thank Duke Energy. They held a conference call yesterday. I think it's important to note that they were well prepared. They had doubled their number of linemen They had plussed up their tree removal crews by 50%, and they had the ability to triple their assets for power outage response through mutual aid. That's a very, very strong response capability. And they held a conference call to let not only the state but all the counties know where they were in the ability to respond to this event. The Commander-in-Chief, Governor McCrory, working with Major General Lusk, allowed the State Emergency Response Team to activate several Humvee teams. These teams were deployed to the eastern and central part of the state, and we currently have 2 Humvee teams up in Rocky Mount, 2 Humvee teams down in Sanford, and then we have them in the counties of Camden, Pasquotank, Pamlico, Martin County, and Greene County. What these Humvee teams have been doing is they've been following emergency medical services to make sure that if there's any issues in their response, that they can help out as needed. We actually deployed a team up to Elizabeth City yesterday, and they helped some stranded motorists along the way. They're also performing wellness checks for our disabled residents and elderly residents to make sure that they're doing fine. I'd also like to recognize our public officials. Their foresight in closing down schools and also allowing non-essential government employees to go home, I think really helped us avoid some issues that you might see happening right now in other states. And let me also say that there were some shelters activated. As the governor said, we sheltered 50 people last night. They were able to have a warm and safe place to go. These shelters were activated by the counties, not the state, but they're doing a great job. We're proud of the counties in North Carolina. A special thanks to the State Emergency Response Team that comes together in times like this. Our Department of Transportation, our North Carolina National Guard, and our State Highway Patrol, they're working here in the state EOC with us, and we're still activated at a level 3. And we still have 24-hour operations, and we're committed to providing resources to within 30 minutes of being requested. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Tony Tatum. Mr. Secretary?
The NCDOT family also sends out its sympathies to those impacted by the loss of life and the injured from the accidents in Surrey County, and there were a couple other accidents around the state. The NCDOT team has been working hard really for the last 3 days in preparation for this storm, and I'll just give you some big numbers here. We've had 2,500 employees on the roads for the last 24 hours, 1,300 trucks, 170 graders. 91 counties are impacted. That's all of the 14 divisions throughout the state. And in the last 24 hours, they've spread 17 tons of sand and salt. So the focus has been on primary roads, interstates, main U.S. routes, and we're hoping to have all of those clear by this afternoon, and then shift to secondary roads, which will take another 24 to 36 hours to finish clearing. Many secondary roads have had an initial scrape. The focus right now is on primary roads and trying to make sure that they're sanded and salted and cleared so that tonight, as freezing temperatures get even lower, the potential for black ice is lessened. You'll never reduce it completely or eliminate it completely, but we want to lessen it because that really becomes the big killer in this kind of storm is the black ice, and particularly at night. So that's our focus for the next 24 to 36 hours, shifting from getting all of the primary routes cleared and then getting all the secondary routes cleared. And so we've also got some reports. The hardest hit areas were sort of the Piedmont with the deepest snow from sort of east of Charlotte up through the north of Rocky Mount area up 95, and then the wintry mix, which is, as the governor said, even more dangerous than just snow, was in Divisions 1, 2, and 3 along the coast, and a little bit in Division 4. So from the Outer Banks down to Wilmington, we had that wintry mix that came in, and it's iced. And what the movement last night of 54 vehicles, the division engineers described them as a lifesaver for those respective areas, being able to handle the issues that confronted them. And just as a footnote, all of the ferry routes have been suspended until conditions allow them to get back doing what they do. It's very windy. There are icy conditions that they're dealing with, and of course it's hard to get to the ferry landings. And I would ask everyone to check with your local DMV or license plate agency. Give them a call before you go, because some are closed, some are open, some are working on half days, and we're updating our website as we speak to make sure that we get that information out as quickly as possible. And I would just emphasize again, Click It or Ticket is a major Governor Highway Safety program, and please, everybody wear their seat belts. It's very dangerous out there right now, and our crews will continue to work hard around the clock, and of course employing good crew rest and safety management for our own teams. I think we had a cracked windshield last night, and one vehicle slid off the road, but no injuries, and that's with 2,500 employees. So our safety record, we're still focused on making sure that our employees are safe as they're out there trying to do everything they can to get the primary and secondary routes open. And thanks to the teamwork of the National Guard, State Highway Patrol, and the emergency management team, and of course the leadership of the governor. Thank you.
Good morning. As you can imagine, Highway Patrol, like everybody else, EM and National Guard and the DOT have been very busy over the last few hours. Yesterday, the Highway Patrol alone responded to over 2,500 calls for service. That's just our calls. That include also what the sheriff's deputies and the police officers also went out there and helped with. And so far today, over 600 calls for service consisting of collisions, stranded motorists, and abandoned vehicles. And as the governor and secretary mentioned, sadly the patrol investigated 2 separate traffic fatalities in Surrey County. Of course, our thoughts and prayers go out with those families. That's our number one mission, is to save the lives of North Carolinians on the roadway, and everyone we lose hurts everybody, and we're saddened by it. So we encourage everyone to stay home if they can, drive safely and slowly when they go out, and also buckle up when they go. The picture across the state is pretty much the same from one end to the other. Snow and ice covered. The main roadways, as Secretary Tatum mentioned, are opening up. They will refreeze tonight and become even more dangerous. So if you're going to get out, get home early so that you're not out there when the black ice hits. The other thing I would encourage is, if people want to know what the road conditions are, they call 511 for that information, and not tie up Star HP or the 911 numbers with it. So we can get our emergency calls out. All right, thank you.
Also, I don't want to forget to remind people of the app Ready NC, which can really target what the weather conditions are and what emergency personnel can assist you throughout the state. I mean, we're dealing with all across our state, so all the conditions are different throughout the state, so it's hard to make a broad blanket announcement about the entire state when all the conditions are different from the coast all the way to the mountains. You may be shocked by this following comment also, but I'd like to thank the media for also helping out with this. Y'all have done a good job, and you're a very important part of the communication link with our citizens, and we do appreciate it. And I stayed up last night watching your reports, so you were helping let us know by the people you had out in the field under tough conditions reporting exactly what was happening. So thank you very much. You're an important part of that communication link. So with that, we'd be glad to answer just a few questions. I'm going to have them mainly answer the questions if they're storm related. Any quick questions? Yes, Laura.
In Division 5, that we're talking about Division 5, we have 80,000 miles of roadway across the state. We've got thousands of miles in Division 5, and they're focusing on the interstate routes. There's a lot of interstate route to clear in Division 5, and we've got very dedicated employees. Wally Bowman, the division engineer, has a very good plan, and he is getting after that plan and following that plan to clear the primary routes and the secondary routes, and they're doing as good a job as possible with the limited amount of equipment that we have to do that. And every truck and grader has been deployed. They're out of the yards. They've been getting after it since really the snow or the ice. It started out with a little bit of icy pellet kind of mix, then it turned into snow, and they've been on the road since then. And they poured brine on every bit of the roadways and in preparation. So they've been over the roads twice now, and as they go through those routes and clear it once and put down sand and salt, then of course they get to the primary routes, and they're as I said, we're going to come back to the secondary routes.
I want to talk about the transfer of some stuff from the west to the east.
Well, the transfer from the west did not impact Division 5. That was 1 through 4 that received the equipment, and it was 11, 12, 13, and 14 that sent the equipment. So Division 5 has its equipment and focused it on its, got a very standard, very good plan to address the needs of the 7 counties within Division 5.
This was, again, a very unique storm across the state where everyone was hit, so it was even more difficult to transfer from one to another. Every division was hit, I believe, in this storm, which is quite unique for North Carolina, from the mountains all the way to the coast. And knowing the length of our state, that's quite a storm. And we need to be patient, and we also need to recognize the safety needs of our personnel also, who are taking great risks to work under these conditions. Yes, ma'am. I think it's too early for me to state that, because we're still doing an evaluation, as we do in every storm, and we will go through an evaluation of lessons learned and what steps we need to take. And I will get recommendations from this team on what the lessons are and what steps we need to prepare for next time. But I would say overall, they've done an outstanding job. And I think if you look at some of the reports from the other states, I'm very pleased with our preparation. There are other states that are having much more difficulty. Of course, each state has its own unique conditions and demographic issues and geographic issues, and this was quite a unique storm. So do you have anything else to add to that, Mike?
Sir, I think you're right. We're assessing it.
We're still in it.
It's not over yet.
Yeah, it's not over yet. We're still in it.
Governor, I would add that.
What's that? Well, I think they're going to approach tomorrow as the changing conditions. Right now, in my report this morning, hopefully some sun will come out this morning, which is one of our great clears of ice and snow. So they're adapting to the weather conditions, and will also be adjusting equipment as needed across the state. And again, each area of our state is so different regarding what the equipment needs and what the weather patterns are. I mean, you go up to the mountains and look at what their needs are versus Wilmington, which was hit pretty hard, and other parts of the east. They're just two completely different potential needs. And the unique thing about this team is they adapt very quickly to the unique needs across the state.
I would add
Come on up.
Laura's question. There's 6,000 lane miles of highway in Wake County alone. That's like driving across the country twice. And so when you put it in that perspective, think about the 100 vehicles that we've got on the road, trucks with plows and graders, and having to drive 6,000 miles of lane miles to clear, and having to do it multiple times because one pass is not going to be sufficient.
I'm very, very proud of this team and their response. The sad goal is we did not want any fatalities, and that's the one discouraging thing. And we also, not only we had fatalities, but we had accidents where other people were hurt, and that's something we're trying to prevent, and that's our major goal. I don't think we know at this point in time. I will get an update from Mike, who will do an assessment. Go ahead, Mike, if you want to add anything else to that.
Typically, on a snow event, unless it's a historical snow event, one of historic proportions, we're not eligible for federal assistance. If it's an ice event with a lot of widespread power outages, then we could be eligible. At this time, we have to wait until we do our assessments, but I'm not predicting that.
We're very fortunate, by the way. We're very fortunate not to have the power outages that is occurring in other states at this point in time, and so that's a very fortunate occurrence that did happen. So as we stay home and enjoy our families and stay off the roads unless we have to go on the roads, enjoy your family time and get around a safe fire, and read a book and continue to be safe. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.